Star Wars Outlaws will go down as one of the most costly flops in video game history, following the failure of the franchise by Disney's Lucasfilm for nearly the last 12 years. Before, we talked about how the Star Wars Outlaws game by Ubisoft only managed to bank about 1 million copies sold in the first month. And what that means from here is, well, there's not much left to it, and we need to discuss potentially how much money Ubisoft is looking at losing again. Renegade Online. Star Wars Outlaws has just sold about 1 million copies in its first month of existence. I did a video on this the other day showing this article here from Insider Gaming. This is becoming one of my new favorite places to go on an almost daily basis. They really have some great stuff, and there's more stuff I want to get to from this today. There are people out there that are desperately coping over this game. And I mean, look, let's be honest. A lot of these people are the same bots and Disney pixie duster, Disney Star Wars shills that we had for the Acolyte. And if it's not the exact same people, it's the same type. It's the same group of people. The apologists and the shills and the bots out there are trying to make this game out to be, it's fine, it's good, it's fun, y'all are being racist and sexist and whatever else, the toxic Disney Star Wars fan base. But like we keep telling folks, the reality is most normies out there that are gamers, they're not, they're going to play a game that they want to play. They don't care or even watch most of us on YouTube or even know we exist. They're not listening and taking marching orders from people out there. This game failed because Ubisoft showed it to the world. That's a big reason why this game failed. The trailers were not received well. The character was not received well. And Star Wars is a failed brand. We've covered this how many times, audience? But we keep bringing it up because this keeps happening. And it keeps being amazing. It's going to have an impact on the performance of the Mandalorian and Grogu movie. Star Wars Outlaws has sold just 1 million copies in the month since launch. Star Wars Outlaws was plagued with issues at launch, some of which led Ubisoft to make drastic tweaks. It wasn't well received by the general market, and gamers worldwide have been giving it pretty low scores. It also comes as no surprise to learn that in an entire month on the shelves, Star Wars Outlaws has sold just 1 million copies. It's not as many sales as Ubisoft expected. That is putting it nicely. Which explains why the recent comments about the game's performance proving softer than expected. It's also partly why Assassin's Creed Shadows was considerably delayed, being pushed back from November of this year, 2024, to February of 2025. Insider Gaming hasn't been able to learn what the expected sales figures were for Star Wars Outlaws, but we have secured a current sales figure from sources close to the game. And I think what they were talking about there, when they said they weren't able to learn what the expected sales figure, presumably they meant what Ubisoft themselves expected game sales for Outlaws to be, right? When they invest, and they decide, okay, we're going to greenlight this project, just like a film, right? A television show, a movie, one of the things they have to look at, they should be, but it never seems to happen with Disney, at least they're not living in reality, is to look at and say, okay, if we spend $200 million to make this movie, if we spend $300 million to make this Star Wars Outlaws game, and it's going to take us 5 or 6 years, what is the identifiable audience? What is the size of the potential audience at the end of the day that we, Ubisoft, can sell this game to for money, for profit? How much money can we make from this? If we're going to put in $300 million, we're going to spend at least another $100 million or so on marketing this game, which it may have been more. Again, Ubisoft has not divulged what that figure is, but as we continue to remind folks, Ubisoft was very, very adamant and proud of the fact that this was the largest marketing campaign that they had done to date for a video game release, which means bigger than anything that they had done previously for even Assassin's Creed, that game is Ubisoft. That is their big game, right? Shadows may have been coming with a bigger budget than Star Wars Outlaws, but we were still roughly 45 to 50 days out when they announced its delay. So a good portion of that marketing blitz had not happened yet. So that's, I think, another reason partly why they wanted to pull back. They could save more of those ad dollars for later. They're not going to get the money they spent back on the Tokyo Game Show, because I'm sure they canceled that way beyond the cancellation deadline. So that money, whatever they spent to be there, that's gone. But we do have estimates of game sales for Star Wars Outlaws from Wall Street analysts that we keep talking about. I'll bring that up in a minute. But they say Insider Gaming hasn't been able to learn what the expected sales figures by Ubisoft was for Outlaws, what they thought that they were going to do in sales. But we have secured a current sales figure from sources close to the game at the time of writing this. And this was written on September 30th, right? We put the video out, I think, Monday morning on this one, or Tuesday morning. But at the time of writing, Star Wars Outlaws has ticked just over 1 million sales worldwide. Ouch. To put that into perspective, we reported in January of 2024, so just 9 months ago, that 3 months after the Assassin's Creed Mirage, or 3 months after Assassin's Creed Mirage had hit the market, it had already secured 5 million sales. People look at this and they go, 1 million units sold for a video game like this. That's a lot. And it's just the first month. But we have to keep reminding people, and again, you can go back and watch the video. We talk a little bit more detail about it, but that's awful. The game's basically done. It's done. It's not going to suddenly pick up another million buyers of the game every month for the next 6-7 months to get itself hopefully up to 7 to 8 million in sales, which were the original projections by Wall Street analysts. It's not going to happen. It's like a television show. It's like a movie. It's like a YouTube video. Most of that consumption happens right away, right? You look at a YouTube video, a TV show, or a movie, what happens? The first couple hours that a YouTube video is out, it usually gets the most views. Very rarely does it happen much later. The first day or two, by the time a YouTube video is out, pretty much all the views are in, right? Rare exceptions, but that's usually a big case. A movie, by the time a movie has been out in theaters for 2 weeks, it's got a huge portion of its business already in the till. A television show, by the end of the first week, people have decided whether or not they're going to watch a show. Really, after the first 2 or 3 days. It's got most of the viewers already in the till for that show. It's been a month. Star Wars Outlaws, it's been a month. It's got 1 million copies sold. Let's be super generous, super duper generous with this. And I didn't talk about this in the video. Super generous and assume that everybody bought the most expensive deluxe edition for this game. That everybody bought the most expensive $120 or $130, it might have been, deluxe edition for this game. Which didn't happen, I promise you. But let's assume it did. So at 1 million copies sold, that would be, by my math, about $120 million. But that's total retail. That's not money back to Ubisoft. That's retail sales. So a significant chunk of that, let's say 20 to 30%, I would presume, or close to it, is going to the retailer that sold it, right? So that might be GameStop, or it might be more. Maybe on some of the deluxe editions, the margins might even be greater. I don't know enough about the retail side of gaming. Craig might know this. I might have to ask him about this to see if he can find out for me. But it might be GameStop. It could be Target. It could be Walmart. It could be Best Buy. Or, more likely these days, if you're buying it on Steam, obviously Steam is a platform that's getting it. Or it might be the PlayStation Store or the Microsoft Xbox Store. So somebody's getting that first piece of the pie. Okay, so that reduces the amount in one spot. Then you've also got licensing things and whatnot. They decide what kind of platforms they want to go on, the cost to do this. You want to put a game on a platform. A lot of times you're paying that platform to be there. So that's a possibility to where, it's another piece of the revenue stream that goes down. So by the time Ubisoft actually gets what they get as a piece of the game sale, once they get that net money back, they might be getting 50 to 60% of it. And again, if everybody bought the most expensive copy of Outlaws at $120, 120 US dollars, I should stipulate, then maybe they got back 60 to 70 million. Maybe less. But of course, not everybody bought the $120 edition. Probably most people bought the $70, the regular edition, the $69 edition for Star Wars Outlaws, right? Like most PlayStation games, most of these kind of games are nowadays. The article also didn't stipulate if this was people that did like Fat Steven did, who does our wonderful thumbnails here many days. It didn't stipulate whether people like him that signed up for the $20 a month Ubisoft membership played the game for a few days and then canceled the $20 membership. So there's that too. I don't know if that's factored into the 1 million sales here, but this is global sales, 1 million copies. Let's say so far Ubisoft got back, realistically, if they're really lucky, maybe they've pulled in around $40 million. Maybe 40, maybe 50 million. And if you're telling me that after a month, that a significant portion of the lifetime sales of this game are already in the till, which theoretically they would be, the game has nowhere else to go. They can update it, they can offer new features, but people have already made up their mind, this game's not for me. At the end of 30 days, and this is at 1 million, let's say by the end of the year at Christmas, this thing magically gets itself out to 3 times its start, 3 million copies. This game still isn't close to breaking even. If Ubisoft spent $200 to $300 million on this game, which I suspect they probably did, because most of these big AAA open world experiences are very costly. They're extremely expensive. It takes a tremendous amount of time and money and resources to making this kind of game before it ever sees a dollar. We talk about movies that might take 2, 3, 4 years in some cases to go from conceptualized and greenlit to actually being shot and put into a theater. Some of these games can take considerably longer, even 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We've talked about some recently that were 10 years in the making. This game has nowhere left to go. Let's say it actually gets itself up to 3 million copies. That means Ubisoft is going to maybe what? Maybe take home about 120 million. Because you got to remember, as time goes on, in order to sell more copies of this game, guess what Ubisoft is going to have to decide to do? They're going to have to drop their pants on pricing. You're not selling $120 copies of this game anymore. This is done. I don't even know if you're going to be able to sell the $70 copies for $70 anymore. That's going to have to come down. You're going to see sales for this game marked down to $49.99 probably in very short order, meaning the actual sales revenue that's going to come back to Ubisoft, even though they're selling more copies, it's going to continue to drop. There's no way they're making their money back on this. They're going to lose quite a bit of money because Star Wars is a broken freaking brand. Now, as far as what the estimates were from other places, I think I still had that up. Let me switch out and grab that one because I don't want to remind folks, again, how bad this is. Let's remind everybody of this article from the Financial Times. I cited this some time ago. This is August 30th. This is the day that Star Wars Outlaws released. This is from the Financial Times, the day Star Wars Outlaws released. In this article to investors, to the Wall Street crowd, as it were, what is important to note is what analysts were expecting, okay? Assassin's Creed, remember, that's the big title for Ubisoft. But this was supposed to be a pretty big title as well. Nick Dempsey at Barclays Bank in the UK says that they have slashed. This is on day one. This is the day the game came out. Analysts were already slashing their expected sales for Star Wars Outlaws and Ubisoft by 40%. They had a prior forecast of selling 8 million units for the quarter, for the fiscal quarter. Okay, so realistically, we were talking about between when this game would release and, say, Christmas, the end of the year, right? Ish. 8 million units is what they expected sold. They slashed that estimate on the day the game came out to 5 million units is what they expected to be sold. Disaster level. Now we hope we might get 2. We have gone from 8 million units in the fiscal quarter, estimated by Wall Street folks, to 5 million units the day it released, being that's our new projection, 40% reduction. That target is not even going to come close to getting hit. They'll be lucky to get half of the newly revised lower target of 5 million copies sold. That's how broken this game is. That's how broken Star Wars is. This is how bad Disney has screwed stuff up. Want me to make it worse? Watch this, kids. For those of you who didn't see this before, Hogwarts Legacy, January of 2024. This game came out early in 23. Hogwarts Legacy sales top 24 million units. Make sure you're subscribed to Valiant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.